What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Well, I watched college football all day today, like many of you, starting with Kenny Dillingham and ASU just routing Iowa State through a record SEC championship game, first ever overtime. The Oregon Penn State game that was kind of looked like a blowout and then got pretty entertaining as the game went on. And obviously Clemson and SMU. Clemson just had a walk-off 55-ish yard field goal to avoid a pretty devastating loss because they were up big and then SMU came storming back. But we got a pretty good idea. Tomorrow, the playoffs, I think, will be set before the NFL games kick off. Pretty sure 9 a.m. Eastern. That doesn't even sound right. Saying maybe it's 9 Pacific. Maybe it's the hour before the NFL kickoff that college football is going to do their show. So we will know the brackets. We pretty much have a good idea. We just don't know the seeding. I think all signs point to SMU not getting invited and Alabama coming on in. And listen, before we'll dive into it in 1 second, you guys, if you want to go to one of these playoff games, I was texting with a buddy tonight, big Oregon fan. He's like, when this game ends, I am buying my Rose Bowl tickets because he knows after, they're going to be the 1 seed, they're going to be playing in the Rose Bowl, right? Notre Dame's going to have a home game. Ohio State's going to have a home game. I mean, some of these home games in a couple weeks are going to be pretty badass. Listen, the NCAA tournament is awesome. Highly recommend getting tickets there as well. My partners at Gametime. But they're all neutral sites, basically, even though technically some are kind of home. They're close to home. This is legit home game. Like South Bend, home game. Ohio State, home game. So if you want to go to one of these games, you want to get an early Christmas present for a family member, for a friend, just take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account. Use the code JOHN, J-O-H-N, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Lowest tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. I think my takeaway as we head into the college football playoffs is Oregon is the best team in the country. Now, we have seen over the last 20 plus years, like all-time dynasty level teams from Alabama to historic team like that LSU team in 2019, some are Urban Meyer's Florida teams, Pete Carroll's USC teams that you're just going to remember forever, right? And I don't think we have a team like that playing this year. I think the parity at the top is as good as it's been. We basically have, I would say, some sort of NFL version of college football. You could even argue, and listen, I'd have to really dive deep into my Oregon people. Is this the best Oregon team of the past 15 years? I think we could have a long argument about that. But who cares? Like, this version of Oregon, relative to the competition, I think it's fair to say, is the best team in the country. And Oregon, unlike, Penn State has won a national championship before. Georgia has won a national championship before. Texas has won national championship before. Ohio State, Oregon never has. So trying to do it is a really, really big deal for them. And this time, wide open, number 1 seed. The quarterback tonight, Dylan Gabriel, and listen, he's had an awesome career. He has been a good player since before he got to Oklahoma. Tonight, I thought he was awesome. He looked like Tua at Alabama tonight, the way he was slinging that thing around. Getting peppered in the pocket, throwing strikes. So many times tonight against Penn State, who, say what you want about James Franklin, he is like the Dan Campbell of Mario Cristobal's. He can recruit. There were players all over that field on Penn State and be like, I'd want him on my team. I'd want him on my team. I'd want him on my team. Can I get that guy on my team? Very talented player. Or players all over the place. And that front, they had some dudes that just are going to be playing for a long time on Sundays, crushing Dylan Gabriel. And the one thing, with the Oregon quarterback, he's not that big. And he would throw a strike, get peppered, deliver it, hit a guy in stride. Obviously, Tez Johnson Bo Nix's buddy from Auburn was dominant tonight, and the speed on the outside was a huge separating factor for Oregon. But I thought he was really, really special. And the difference of him and Aller, who I've been up and down on, and even in that game, you watch him and you go, yeah, damn, whoa, he's a roller coaster. But I will say this about Aller. I will take a chance on Aller 7 days a week and 100 times on Sunday over the two quarterbacks I watched in the SEC championship game. But like he just misses too many passes. And the difference in the game tonight, when all the dust settled, because they were down 28-10, and it wasn't all Aller's fault. There were a couple personal foul penalties, like Penn State was kind of in shambles. Then they come storming back. I thought Gabriel was excellent start to finish. Obviously throws for 4 touchdowns, but so many big passes on second and third and long in the second half when he is just going to get mollywopped. Some of these passes aren't even accounting for first downs. It's just moving, getting them into a more advantageous 3rd and 5 instead of being 3rd and 10. It's like the dude was tough, throwing strikes. You could rely on him. And then Aller, 2 passes tonight that, listen, there is no disputing his physical gifts. Like, that is what I would consider a really good project. In the history of the league, that's like a second-day pick. Maybe because of his tools. I'm sure he's I've heard good things, high character guy. Maybe he goes a little higher than he should. But there's a lot to work with there. But accuracy and touch, man, you're just like, damn. Because they ran a trick play they were down 7 points in the second half, and they're driving. And they call this Belichickian Josh McDaniels tight end is where the tackle is, and the tackle's flexed out with the wide receivers. And clearly Oregon is confused. Warren, who's a first-round player, number 44, beelines down the seam, is wide open, and Aller rushes the pass. And Warren tries to juggle it like he's Jerry Rice and just is not able to catch it. If he just takes a deep breath, lobs it up, Warren probably scores. Then Penn State kicks a field goal and misses. And the game kind of flips right there. I thought that was a huge miss in the game. And obviously at the end of the game, when their defense was awesome, just making big plays down the stretch to get the ball back, they basically forced a 3-and-out on Oregon and didn't even have to use any of their timeouts. Well, they only had 2. And they get the ball back with like under 2 minutes and 30 seconds with 2 timeouts and the 2-minute warning. And then he throws a go ball down the seam. And listen, you could put that on the coaches as well. Like, what are you guys doing? And so he makes 2 huge mistakes where Gabriel just wasn't making mistakes and just doesn't make mistakes. Now, Gabriel doesn't possess like the physical gifts Aller did or does. Aller had the one play where Ungulale, DJ's brother, who's Oregon's pass rusher, probably the position DJ should have played, defensive line, is yanking his undershirt. Aller's unfazed as he's getting yanked, throws a strike into the end zone to number 6. You're like, holy shit, what a pass. And that game, I had on the Big Ten game on the big screen, sound on. The SEC game, or not the ACC game on the smaller TV, no sound. That felt right. Like, one game felt like NFL level intensity. The other felt a little minor league. I mean, let's face it. And that's no shade. Like, I don't have a dog in the fight. It's not like I'm an Oregon guy. Though, very proud of the former Pac-12 who won 2 of the Power 4 conferences with Oregon and the ASU. But excellent season from Dan Lanning. Tonight was a big game. I actually think, like, listen, Oregon was favored. They went in there. They jumped out 28-10. They had the lead the whole time. They took some punches. They made huge plays. Aller misses that go ball by a little bit, and the DB makes a great catch. It's like Oregon just makes plays, and they got playmakers fucking everywhere. A lot of team speed. Now, one thing's kind of clear is you can run on them a little bit, but the one thing I would say is, like, I was pretty impressed with Penn State. Like, Penn State's got a lot of players I would want. Their entire front 7, I would want. Warren, 44, I would want. Their 2 running backs, Singleton and I think 13, give me those 2 guys in the backfield. So talent is not the issue. A little weird, their skill guys on the outside aren't as good, which is somewhat ironic given that Franklin is an elite recruiter and he's a wide receiver guy at his core. Like that's kind of his baby. He was a wide receiver coach when he was coming up. But they definitely got talent. They definitely can win a playoff game. I think if you're a Penn State fan, uh, listen, you lost to the best team in the country. You kind of hold your head high. That final pick sucks. But I think you have to believe like we have the talent to win a playoff game. We have the talent to make noise. And I think if you're an Oregon fan, you go, this is our fucking year. We are winning the national title. We have a quarterback that's good enough. We have a coaching staff that's good enough. We have talent on offense and defense that's good enough. We got playmakers, speed. I mean, the amount of time that the one thing you saw tonight is that speed relative to Penn State, which is good, especially on the back end. They have a bunch of highly touted guys. Looked like advantage Oregon. It looked like advantage Oregon. The one thing you'd say about Penn State is like the way they recruit their NFL talent is a lot like the Tennessees and the Georgias. Like those are the type guys they're rolling out, in the front. So if I'm a Ducks fan, I'm pretty fired up for this playoffs. I'm feeling good. It's not championship or bust in terms of like being down on my coach or whatever, but I do think it's fair that like expectations are really, really high. It's been that way all season. They answered the bell. They have not lost. First year in the Big Ten, beat Ohio State, beat Penn State, #1 seed. Doesn't get any better. That's, you had expectations. The wind blows hardest at the top of the mountaintop. You didn't get blown over. You handled it all season long. Early in the season was a little weird. Playing your best football post Ohio State, feeling good now headed on into the playoffs. And if you're Penn State, I think it's a successful year if you win a playoff game. And James Franklin kind of needs that, right? Because clearly he's not a bad coach. I think he's like the better version, like I said, of Mario Cristobal. But eventually you got to win a game where you're the underdog against a good team. And not like an underdog like 20 points, like 2 or 3 points. Like, can you just beat a team that we all think's a little bit better than you, but not that much better skill-wise? And I don't know. I don't really have that much to say about Clemson SMU because I was so locked into the Big Ten game. Obviously, Clemson's into the playoffs as a 10-3 team. SMU's out. And I really have zero sympathy. I do not care. Like, I'm not going to spend much time, put Alabama in. Basically, 5 through 12 for me is a television show. And would I rather see Alabama Notre Dame or SMU Notre Dame? Give me Bama Notre Dame all day long. And Clemson, like this is a little like basketball, like the NCAA tournament, where sometimes, like an NC State in the ACC would be like the 5th or 6th seed in the basketball tournament. Then all of a sudden they win the conference tournament. You get an automatic bid to the dance. And that's what Clemson just did. They gave themselves a chance once Miami lost, and then they won the game, which was a huge advantage for them because the game was right down the street from where they play. So, sucks for SMU, but it is what it is. I looked at their schedule mid-game, was like, who have they even beaten? I don't even care. The NFL season is rolling along, and the contenders are separating from the pack. The one thing that hasn't changed this season, DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And it's the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Long bombs, fades to the end zone, big runs, you name it. We do not care how you get them. We just want to bet touchdowns at DraftKings, and it's the best place to do it. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like a player scoring a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your first pick. Here's a reason for new customers to do a touchdown dance on their own. Bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Just bet $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Let's get to the SEC Championship game. Pretty big. Listen, the referee, the officiating was pretty terrible all game long. It was not a well officiated game. Sark complained about it at halftime, gave it all time. Well, they need to call holding for them too, and then just walked off. Very awkward moment. Carson Beck gets knocked out of the game. Looks like he has the Brock Purdy injury from the Eagles NFC Championship game. Kirby said after the game that he could not grip the ball. Then the backup, Gunnar Stockton, all-time great backup quarterback, SEC quarterback name, gets KO'd, right, in OT. They had to, I don't think he got 6 quarterbacks dressed. Carson Beck comes back into the game. Well, his arm's dangling as he runs into the game. So it's clear they're going to hand the ball off. And then they score the game-winning touchdown. But I think there are a lot of elements to that game. One big picture thing, I don't think either one of those two teams. Now, Carson Beck, I think it's fair to take an educated guess, given that he can't grip the ball, and we saw Purdy and we saw the way he was hurt. That if he does need Tommy John, like obviously his season's over, they weren't winning a national championship with Carson Beck. Just like Texas cannot win a national championship with Quinn Ewers. And listen, Texas was beating the shit out of them in the first half. I mean, just running it all over the place. And I got so many texts from people in the NFL. It's like, Sark is so good at scheming around Quinn Ewers. You cannot depend on the guy. And I think they're kind of in a tough spot. Like, should they have just gone to Arch at this point? But they have no shot. And everyone knows it. Any Texans fan, any person that watches college football, you're not going to win however many 4 games with Quinn Ewers at quarterback. It is not going to happen. And they clearly, like Oregon, like Ohio State, like they have a national championship level roster. They have elite players all over the place. And their quarterback is a major liability. And when I see, some of these people are being sarcastic and some of them are being kind of serious, like same energy now that Georgia's quarterback gets knocked out, basically alluding to Florida State. It's like, no, it's not the same energy because Jordan Travis was one of the Florida State's better players. And when the backup came in, it was a dramatic drop-off. So when Florida State got left out, it's like, well, they're down to their third-string quarterback. All these guys look like scrubs. Their starting quarterback was a legit player. I mean, hell, he still got drafted off a devastating knee injury. Not like he was a first-round quarterback or anything, but the gap was huge. I watched Gunnar Stockton come in. It's like, what the hell is the difference? Carson Beck just isn't that good. I got a text again tonight from a number 2 with the team. Was like, I don't remember any player losing more money just based on play, not something off the field, not getting in trouble, just on a weekly basis, watching them play, starting week 1 to the championship game, than Carson Beck. So, like, I view Georgia upgraded. This kid can run around. It just feels like it gives them life because, hell, they might have been one and done with Carson Beck. They might be one and done with this guy. But the difference at quarterback in this situation, to me, is nothing. And say this about, listen, a lot of respect for Texas. They have a huge payroll like Ohio State. So they shouldn't ever be not pretty damn good, right? And they spend a ton of money. But year 1, SEC in the SEC championship game, hat tip to you. Today, everyone's going to bitch and moan about the referees. You had your shot, man. You really did. And I don't think you get to bitch and moan when you're rolling that out of quarterback. I really don't. But you played Kirby twice now, and now that Saban's gone, he's the clear king of the hill, and he's beat you twice. He's beat you twice. He kicked your ass at home, and then he beat you again. And today is on you because 6-3 at halftime, like it should have been 18-3. Because if you get a big enough lead, you're winning the game pretty easily. But you outgain them, you dominate them. Georgia looked terrible. Just an embarrassing first half from Texas in terms of the scoreboard relative to the way they played. And I think it comes down to the quarterback play. And you watch the way Sark has to call plays with this guy at quarterback. It's wild. It's like, he's got a team full of Ferraris, and then he's got a Honda Accord at quarterback. Usually, if you have a Ferrari at quarterback and then have some Honda Accords around him, like it's easier to be a better team. When that is your major limitation. And listen, for a long, long time in college football, we have seen great teams have average to below starting quarterbacks. I mean, honestly, most of my life growing up in the 90s, most quarterbacks for the best teams in college were not future John Elways and Dan Marinos. They were a bunch of random guys in the late 90s and early 2000s. A lot of Ken Dorseys, a lot of Josh Heupels. But I feel like when I'm watching Quinn Ewers, like NFL, he's an NFL. Like I don't even view him as an NFL player. At least I've seen some moments where I could, if you wanted to draft Carson Beck in the 6th round, like, okay. But like, I do not view Quinn Ewers as an NFL player. So I think Sark has to think long and hard about making a change at quarterback to Arch Manning in the playoffs. Because at this point, like, you've paid him the NIL, it is what it is. It's pretty wide open. It actually doesn't get any more wide open. And obviously, from a mobility standpoint, Arch is much more mobile. And listen, I think Arch's arm, I think when you just say Arch Manning to a casual fan, people think they're getting like Josh Allen or Mahomes or something. His arm is not that great, but it's not like Quinn Ewers is out there slinging it around, like he's Justin Herbert. Like you just can't keep going like this. But that has to hurt. I didn't see Sark's post-game press conference or any of his quotes because we just went right into this night game. But I can't imagine he's not going to sleep well tonight. The first time around, get your ass kicked, tip your hat. It is what it is. Tonight, like, they came out ready. They were fucking ready to win that game. There was that visual during the ASU game. I think it was a halftime. They had a camera in the bus for Texas. And usually, a football team has multiple buses, offense, defense, or whatever. Usually the head coach is in bus number 1, which tends to have the offense. But depending on how you do it, it could just be like a mismatch of different players and coaches. And Sark's in the front seat, basically right next to the bus driver, with just a massive mouthful of red man. And you could tell, like, he was pretty dialed. And he came out swinging, but his quarterback let him down. Like, I give them a lot of credit. His defense is good. He has matured as a coach. Like, his teams look much more tougher than, let's say, Ryan Day. Like, I think if we're doing tiers for coaching, Sark's in a different level than Ryan Day. But, like, his quarterback, man, it's just the same thing with Ohio State. When you have limitations with your quarterback and you have to try to scheme around him, you're going to have problems. Georgia always has kind of played like that. Kirby's not defensive guy. So he doesn't want to put it all on the quarterback. Like, in a weird way, Kirby ain't really looking for Matt Stafford. It's not the way he wants to play. Sark is. And Quinn Ewers' name is bigger than the actual player. But fantastic win for Georgia. Kirby's taking shots on the podium at Greg Sankey about the schedule and the difficulty of it. He's not wrong. I saw that Texas doesn't even have a top 25 win this season. I bet there's a chance Penn State doesn't either. So, you look at Georgia, they beat Texas twice. Oregon's beat Penn State and Ohio State. So those two teams are going to be number 1 and 2. Let's go to the morning. Most of my life, definitely my late 90s into the 2000s, Arizona State has had a moment here and a moment there. Jake Plummer, Pat Tillman, they had decent team in the 2004, 2005 range. But Arizona State, I would say the last 10 plus years has mainly been a dog shit program. It's just completely irrelevant. And at times it's been one of the worst Power 5 programs. And what Kenny Dillingham inherited from Herm Edwards was an embarrassment. Think of how bad Herm Edwards was. He coached at ASU for 5 seasons. And when he got fired, ESPN immediately hires him back. And they don't have him talk about college football at all. Obviously, he's an NFL guy. He's been an NFL coach. I get it. It's like he should be able to talk about the NFL too. But he literally had just coached in Power 5 for 5 seasons. And it's like, as someone told me a while back, that like, yeah, I don't even think Herm would be able to tell you half his team's first name. So the program was in shambles. Dillingham takes over. They go 3-9. They have no NIL money. It's a program that no one really cares about. And then this season, to win the conference, when you go to the Big 12 and you're picked to finish last, it's just an incredible accomplishment. And nothing sums up football more than Cam Skattebo, the running back, who, if it wasn't for Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, would be the player of the year in the Big 12, and just is an incredible story. And I think it's kind of symbolizes why football resonates with so many people. He had 0 stars coming out of high school. 0 stars. I looked up his junior year in high school. He played in Sacramento at Rio Linda. It's a small little school. He had 300 or 3,500 yards and 42 touchdowns. I don't know if he got injured or something happened his senior year in high school, but he wasn't as productive. His junior year in high school looks like Derrick Henry in high school. Then he goes to Sac State for a couple years. And while he's at Sac State, they have the greatest year in the history of the program. They go to the playoffs. Troy Taylor, their head coach, becomes the head coach at Stanford, and he clearly goes in the transfer portal. One of the better transfer portal guys goes to Arizona State. And 2 years later, I mean, today, he looked like Mike Allstott meets Walter Payton. He's looked like this all season, but today he had a couple runs of just breaking tackles and running through guys and making guys miss. You know, they said the running back was dead, and I'm guilty of this too. I thought so. The running back bounce back and relevancy and importance is undeniable right now. The amount of top 100 players in college football that are going to get drafted, like meaning the top 100 picks of the draft, there might be 10 plus running backs. And we saw 2 guys, Arizona State and Boise State. Those teams are going to have buys. If it's going to be Oregon, Georgia, Arizona State, and Boise, or Boise, Arizona State, I would put Arizona State 3 and Boise 4. They are led by 2 running backs. You remove those 2 running backs and just put an average college running back, neither one of those 2 teams sniffs the playoffs. Obviously, Ashton Jeanty, I don't know if they're going to count playoff games on your record. They usually do because bowl games typically count. You know, this isn't like the NFL where regular season separate from playoffs. It usually counts under one umbrella. Maybe they've made changes to it. So, you know, if he wins, if Boise State were to win a playoff game, maybe Jeanty could catch Barry Sanders for a single season rushing. Those 2 guys are incredible players to watch. I mean, my personal favorite position on offense is running back. More than quarterback, more than left tackle, more than tight end or wide receiver. Because no position encapsulates football more than that. You have to block middle linebackers, pass rushers, inside and out in pass protection. You literally are the last line of defense for the guy protecting the quarterback. You then have to catch the ball like a wide receiver. Most of your routes are going to be around the line of scrimmage, but they send you on some wheel routes where you kind of go up the field. You have to have good hands, especially in 2024. And then you have to run the ball inside where there are 3 or 4 300-plus pounders sitting there, as well as linebackers, multiple, 5-6 yards behind the line of scrimmage, running full speed at you, as well as a couple safeties, and go outside where you are running or attempting to run by some of the fastest guys on the football field. And you watch these 2 guys, it's football porn. I mean, it really is. Scattaboo, I mean, he's a fucking baller. And Jeanty's just an all-time great college player. I mean, he's going to go down as probably the best player in the history of his program. You know, if he was bigger, we'd be in discussion for him to be like a top 10 pick. He's 5'8", so he's one of the best college players in recent memory. But when you're 5'8", how high can you really go in the draft? Like someone's going to take a 5'8" running back at pick 12? Like that seems a little high. To me, I think when the dust settles, I have heard this draft isn't great, but I would say my guess is somewhere like 20 to 28 in that range, just because he's small. You know, you don't want to make a, living off drafting 5'8" guys in the first round, even though he's clearly a great player. And ASU's running back, my guess is watching him play. You have to see what he runs and injury history and stuff, but 3rd, 4th round. But those guys are just elite college players. And, the thing with Boise, this is not Boise's best team. Like, I started in football in the WAC at Fresno State. The teams that in 2000, the year before I got there was the year they beat Oklahoma in the Chris Peterson Statue of Liberty game. And a couple years later, They have a team that has 10 guys drafted, led by Kellen Moore at quarterback. I mean, he wasn't their best NFL prospect. I actually don't think Kellen Moore even got drafted, maybe went in the seventh round. But they had a team full of NFL guys. And this team is not as good as those teams. But the program is pretty special. Since basically 1999, they average like 10 wins a season. And they have a ton of 12 and 13 win seasons. Like when they win 8 or 9 games in a year, it's kind of an outlier season. This program for non-power 4/5 has easily been the most consistent in the country. And they have produced the most coaching talent. I mean, Sark's defensive coordinator, where is he from? Boise State. And you just look all over college football, they have assistant coaches from Boise State. Obviously, Kellen Moore with the Eagles, Boise State guy. And it was a think tank of just high level coaching, high level football. And I think it's really cool. You know, in the ASU situation, are they going to maintain this year after year? They got pretty lucky. They got a great transfer running back from Sac State in the transfer portal. It's one of those that, like, sometimes you're going to strike oil, but how often does that happen? Like, the likelihood, if everyone knew he was going to be that good, other programs would have been all over him because it's not like ASU has any money. Everyone last year knew Genty was elite. When they fired their coach, I think with a couple games left to go in the season, Genty was going to hit the transfer portal. And I think technically he did. And I read this long article, like he had 7-figure offers. So it's not hard to figure out who was probably interested. The Oregons, the SCs, the Texases, the Ohio States, like those type teams were sniffing around that player. And he stayed at Boise State for $300,000. Now, I think he got other deals included, but that's the only amount, like that's the most amount of cash they could guarantee him. And he single-handedly just, I mean, it's not all him, it's a team game, but like, let's face it, like he's kind of Steph Curry at Davidson. Like that's what he is. And that's the cool part about this playoffs is like, I'm not a huge proponent of these guys should automatically get a non-power 4 spot. But as Stuckey and I have talked about it, it's clear they're doing it for lawsuits. No one wants to get sued. But I think if you are going to allow one of these smaller schools into the playoffs, it's very cool when their best player is like a first-round draft pick who plays running back who they want to hand the ball to. I think on UNLV Friday night, he had like 30 carries. And he had 200 yards, but they just handed it to him nonstop. You know, it's like here, 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 here. And eventually he's going to break one. And last night he did. He made a guy miss, boom, on the right side, up the sideline. He gone. And what a fun college football season. And I'm excited for these playoffs because I think if today showed anything, if week in, week out has shown anything, everything's on the table. And the transfer portal, the NIL, I would say the spreading of the high-end assets, which are the players, the lack of depth for some of these teams, anything can happen. And from a gambling standpoint, whenever they come out with the brackets, you know, if you tell me the 7th seed ends up winning it, you know, I think it's going to be believable. I think any team in the dance, I don't think Boise could win 4 games, but I think any of the big programs, you know, Tennessee, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, obviously Oregon, like they can win any game. But as we've seen, like all of them get weird. All of them get weird fast. It's hard to trust these teams on a week in, week out basis, which makes for a very, very entertaining product. So I'm really excited. If you had a chance to see the clip of the committee in the hotel room with little ass TVs, it's like, guys, you cannot be the committee that determines the college football playoffs with 30-inch televisions. I get you're, you know, at some Four Seasons or JW Marriott, they have to be able to go to Costco and buy 4 80-inch TVs and put them there. I mean, some of these people on the committee are like 70 years old and they're sitting 25 feet back. It's like, I'm 40. I couldn't see. Now, granted, I think, you know, as the doctor told me a couple weeks ago, I might need glasses for some long range vision, but still, like, you guys, I can't take you seriously that you are determining the ranking system with 30-inch TVs in there. Now, I think they had one TV that was like 50, but it looked like something I would have had like when I was a sophomore in college. at a house that probably should have been burned down. We all moved out a couple years later because, like any college house, we do a number on it. But the television setup in that room was just a absolute embarrassment. So what a day for college football. And now we go to bed and we wake up in a couple hours and we watch NFL football. So it's coming down the home stretch, baby. Buckle up. Have a good night. See you.